Hey, my name is Danny, and in this video we're going to be talking about intervals. Now, before we jump into intervals, it's important that you know some pretty basic things like what the musical alphabet is, what a sharp is, what a flat, what a whole step, what a half step is. Even building major scales is really important to know. So if you need to check out our first video that covers the basics of basics, please do so. You also need to know what notes belong to each key. So check out our second video that covers diatonic harmony and the circle of fifths to help you be familiar with that. So, knowing that you already know those things and you're familiar with them, let's jump right into intervals. An interval is the relationship between two notes, not 3 or 4 or 5, just one note to another, 2 notes. We can name these intervals in 2 different parts. Their distance, which is like a measurement, and we just measure them by how far apart they are, if it's a second, a third, a fourth, a fifth, a sixth, or a seventh, or an octave. And we also name them by their quality or its type: major, minor, perfect, augmented, or diminished. Those are the different qualities or types of intervals that we have. So let's jump into the different types of intervals that we have. The first interval we'll talk about is what we call unison. And unison is basically when you have the same exact note. Here's another unison. Pretty basic. The second interval we have is what we call a minor second. A minor second is the same thing as a half step. So from C to C sharp, or if you want to call it D flat. So let's call it D flat. Let's say C to D flat. C to D is the second. Because it's C and D flat, it's a minor second. Here's another minor second. A to B flat. D to E flat is a minor second. Our next interval is the major second. A major second is 2 half steps away. C to D makes it a second, 1, 2. And the fact that there's 2 half steps makes it major. The other thing that makes it major is that D belongs to the major scale of C. Therefore, D is major to C. It's a major second. Our next interval is our minor third. A minor third is 1, 2, 3 half steps apart. And it's minor because E flat belongs to the minor scale of C, C minor, or it can be a minor third simply because it's 3 half steps apart. And then the next one's a major third, C to E. C to E is 4 half steps apart, 1, 2, 3, 4. I like to think of it as a major third because E is part of the C major scale. So its relationship to C is major. Major third. The next interval is what we call a perfect fourth. It's a perfect fourth because it's the same whether it's a C major scale or a C minor scale. So here's a C minor scale. F is still the same in both major and minor. It's also and there's other reasons that we can lead into rabbit trails that we're not going to get into why it's a perfect fourth. But just remember, fourths and fifths are always going to be perfect. And so are octaves, and we'll get to those later. So our perfect fourth is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 half steps away. 5 half steps. Okay? So our next interval from C to F sharp or G flat, we call this a tritone. Now, this can go into a lot of different rabbit trails, but I'm just going to try and briefly explain the basics of this. A tritone is a raised fourth, an augmented fourth, or a diminished fifth. If C to G is a perfect fifth, if I lower that a half a step, it becomes a diminished fifth, or an augmented fourth, depending on how you want to look at it. Either way, it's the tritone of one another. So So if I flip it around, there's still tritones. Our next interval is the fifth. We call this a perfect fifth. A perfect fifth is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 half steps. Or I like to think of it's a perfect fifth because it belongs to both the major and minor scale of C. Our next interval is the minor sixths. A minor sixth is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 half steps away from each other. And A flat belongs to the minor scale of C. And we didn't cover minor scales in our first video, but really quick, a minor scale is whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step. So, our minor sixths. C to A flat. Major six, C to A, is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 half steps away. And A belongs to the major scale of C, therefore it's major. Our next interval is a minor seventh. From C to B flat is a minor seventh. B flat belongs to the minor scale of C, therefore it's minor. It's also 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 half steps away from each other. Our next interval is the major seventh. A major seventh is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 half steps away from each other. B belongs to the major scale of C, therefore it's a major seventh. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's the seventh degree of the major scale. And our last interval, we call this an octave. It's the same exact note, 8 notes higher. An octave, in terms of half steps, is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 half steps away. So those are the different types of intervals. Let's take a look at the types of intervals that belong to a major scale. I like to call this diatonic intervals. It's basically, if I have a G major scale, remember, G has one sharp, F sharp, if we're following that major scale formula. So what we're going to do is we're going to take G and we're going to measure each scale degree to G and find out the types of intervals that are in a major scale. Let's look at the first interval, G to A. G to A is a major second. A belongs to the major scale of G. It's also 2 half steps apart. Major second. The next is a major third. G to B. G to B is 4 half steps, 1, 2, 3, 4. B belongs to the major scale of G, therefore it's a major third. Our next diatonic interval is a fourth, a perfect fourth. G to C is a perfect fourth. C is in the major scale of G, therefore it's a perfect fourth. And remember, fourths can't be major or minor. They're only perfect, augmented, or diminished. The next interval is a perfect fifth for the same exact reasons. The next interval is a major sixth, G to E. Our second to last interval is a major seventh. F sharp is diatonic to the key of G, meaning F sharp is in the key of G, therefore it's a major seventh. And our last interval is the octave, G to G. So that's what we're going to cover today in terms of intervals. Now, of course, we could have dove into deep rabbit trails about every single interval, especially that thing about the tritone and different things like diminished thirds and augmented seconds. It's just we can go on and on and on. But we really just want to cover and understand basic intervals so that when we start building chords and triads, which we'll talk about in our next video, those things kind of make sense. So again, do your homework, do your own research if you want to dive in deeper. We're just covering some basic things so that we're familiarized with basic theory as we begin to build chords. Thanks for watching, guys.